The EU has now come to an agreement with Turkey to send the migrants back from Greece. Could you talk a little about what's happening in Greece? Because we were talking about that before we came down here. Maybe share that with
As you all know, there was the sort of migration route, from people were leaving Turkey, getting into rubber dinghies, crossing the Aegean Sea, and making their way north, principally to Sweden and Germany. In March of this year, that route was closed because there was a deal between the EU and Turkey that the border would be closed. Turkey would receive the refugees back from Greece, and then Europe in return would receive 2 refugees for everyone returned. But effectively what's happened, this is a policy to deter people moving. And when people need to get out of a house that's on fire, they will do anything to jump out of that window on the top floor to try and survive. And this is what we're seeing now. So the impact is really quite devastating because people are no longer crossing into Greece. They also are taking a much longer route round to Italy. But the other thing is we've got a backup in Greece of some 50,000 refugees. And the conditions, my staff have just come back, they came back last week from doing an assessment of the conditions for women and children. And the staff have been all over the world, and I haven't seen people so disturbed what they were seeing. I mean, they were horrified by the conditions. Basically, what is happening on the ground there is that the large camp, the Idomeni camp, has been disbanded, and people are being put into what are really detention centers. They're using old factories, the factories that are not suitable to be used for housing people, while some of the asylum claims are being processed. And there's some other camps that are more out in the open and people are living in tents. But what is so disturbing is that women and children are not necessarily being separated from men they don't know. We had a number of women come to us and tell us that they were being raped at night because they were going to the latrines and there was no lighting. And one of the basic things that we know about keeping women safe in humanitarian settings is latrines need to be separated. You need to have locks on doors of showers and bathrooms in general. You need to have lighting near these areas. And you need to really separate women from men because violence happens in all of these settings. So women are reporting violence. They're reporting that there are no adequate services. They've got no one to report what's happening to. There are no reproductive health services. One of the things we saw last year were a very high number of women who were pregnant who were moving through Europe. And this is the same in these camps. There are women giving birth in these camps and finding it incredibly difficult to get medical care in Greece. It's unbelievable to think that this could be happening in Europe. This to me is tragic. I think we're failing women and girls. We're failing women and girls in a way that I haven't seen in some of the other settings, and we need to do something about it.
Do you think the Italian government is addressing these needs in a better way than the Greek authorities are, or is it the same across the board?
I have no reason to believe. Right. I mean, basically what's happening in Europe is a policy to deter people. The EU doesn't want more people coming in, and so this was an agreement to push people back and to contain them. And what we also hear in Turkey, those few that have been returned or those who are still waiting to get out, the conditions are bad. I think it's important to realize that people don't move without really good cause. And when we look, a lot of our work in research has been looking at why were people leaving Jordan, Turkey, and Lebanon in particular, because of the sort of closeness of the cultures. In many ways, it would make sense for them to stay. But what we're seeing is that kids have been out of school for 4 years. At least 30% of households are headed by women. This is because the men have disappeared. They're detained, they've been killed, they're off fighting. And for the first time, these women have got to manage the household. Well, they're not getting enough food. Their kids are going out to beg or to work at very young ages. They're not in school. The services are not adequate. And, you know, to be fair, these host communities have done what they can. I mean, they're not necessarily rich countries, and they need a lot more support. This is the other failure. We have not given them enough support to be able to manage the crisis, so people are moving on.